Did you know that there are a lot of people in the mental health field who push the idea of thorough psychological evaluations to get a definitive answer to whether or not somebody has ADHD? And then there are other people in the field who do not even believe that cognitive testing should be used for the sake of diagnosing ADHD. I did a thorough evaluation about 6 months ago because I had seen content from places on the internet that seemed to suggest it as a really definitive answer, and I thought that it just was widely accepted to be a definitive diagnostic tool. So then, when I got my results back, I was diagnosed with ADHD, and I was diagnosed with it as a teenager as well. I was just seeking a more thorough diagnosis. But despite diagnosing me again, the person explained to me that I kind of had weird mixed results. Um, One of my executive function tests came back in the impaired range, which is, very atypical, and certainly suggests a real issue with executive function in that one area. But then I had a couple of other executive function tests that were in like the 70th something and 80th something percentile, which would suggest I have good executive function in other areas, which is pretty odd for somebody with ADHD. And then one test that specifically looks at like patterns in your attention span. It's the one where you like hit a space bar. I forget if it's if you do see an X or if you don't see an X or something like that. But it's really a lot more involved than whether or not you hit the space bar when you should. It times like within just very small segments of time how rapidly, whether you hit it too early or too late, or changes in how rapidly you hit the bar or didn't hit the bar. Anyway, that test came back with four abnormal scores and like said like very high probability of severe tension issues, and it also something about the pattern of the way that I answered showed significant impulsivity, issues with hyperactivity, and one other thing, I can't think of it right now. But so that highly suggested ADHD, and I found one study on that test that said that some people believe that test to be 78% accurate in correctly diagnosing ADHD by itself, and that in the remaining percentage where it misdiagnoses, it's usually that it says somebody doesn't have ADHD when they do. So the percentage of the time where it would say somebody does have ADHD or shows signs of ADHD when they don't have it is like 2%. So that result highly suggests ADHD. And so I was just like confused by how I could have some really clear signs of ADHD and also others that really don't look like ADHD. I thought this was supposed to be a definitive thing. And so then I got looking around on the internet and like Googling like these different tests that I had taken and my results and like bell curves and all of this stuff. And I wound up stumbling upon an article by Russell Barkley, who is kind of really highly regarded as like one of the top experts on ADHD, from my understanding. And he thinks it is really bad practice to use cognitive testing for diagnostic purposes. He believes that when we are given these tests in a testing environment, that it does not accurately show how that person's brain works in the real world. Meaning, how long somebody's attention span is, or how hyperactive they are, how focused they're able to get during that test, just shows how their brain operates in a quiet room when they're taking a test. And that can be very different from how their brain would work maybe in a noisy work environment. So many other real environments where there is noise or visual stimulation, or we are maybe more engaged or maybe less engaged than we would feel taking this test. or in situations where we're more relaxed or more anxious than we would be during this test. Things like you can observe somebody taking these tests and doing really well on the test, but then you follow them to work and observe them doing a boring task or being overstimulated, and you can see that their attention span is really poor or that their ability to switch tasks is really poor. And so his belief is that we should be diagnosing ADHD basically the same way that we diagnose anxiety or major depression or things like that, where it's largely based on giving somebody's thorough background, discussing their symptoms, some of those like screener type questions, like how often do you struggle with this? How often do you feel this way? Those kinds of things, he believes are as accurate of correctly diagnosing ADHD as anything else that we have available to us right now.